Okay, so just diving right in, I will go ahead and share my screen because we have a lovely presentation. So let's see here. Okay, can you all see my screen? Let's see. Here we go. So this is our WordPress 101 session. There will be a WordPress 102 that Landon and I will be doing in the spring. But I will say during this presentation, we will be kind of going through just basic, obviously, WordPress things that would be important for you to know, but we're also going to be doing some in real time. So then that way you guys can see how each little piece will work within certain WordPress pages. So moving on, this is about us. Landon, do you want to go first?
Sure. You all have met me. I'm Landon Lind. I'm the Assistant Director of Communications for Student Life. I've been at UT, as you can see, for 8 years in various communications roles, starting out as a generalist, doing graphic design, writing, editing, all of the things. Narrowed down a little bit more to graphic design when I started with Student Life, and then broadened back out to do more web design and user experience. And now I'm back to doing all the things communications wise.
Perfect. So hi, my name is Kellen. I've been here for about a little over 4 months now. Before this, I was at the system downtown where I basically did kind of somewhat of the same thing, but I've been in digital communications for the last 5 years. So very familiar with it. I got my bachelor's degree here. So I majored in public relations and minored in business administration and got my master's degree from Georgetown. I didn't have it listed here, but in public relations and corporate communications. So moving on, I don't know if you all have taken the university-wide mandatory WordPress training or not, but there are just some basics there that I would love to cover with you all. You may have taken this last month, you may have taken it 12 months ago. So just to make sure that we're all kind of on the same playing field here. So I will go ahead and start discussing the basics. So I would love to talk about how to log in. So if you have a website, let's say I like to use the strengths.utk.edu website a lot as a reference. So if you're logging in, all you have to do is seriously type in strengths.utk.edu/WP admin. And this is true for all of your web pages. If not, Landon, please correct me. And so all you have to do is sign in with your net ID. So if you've done your WordPress training, this should automatically work for you. Please ignore my horrible net ID. It is horrific. So we'll go ahead and log in here. Okay. And so this is what your dashboard looks like on the back end of WordPress. So you will mostly be working in pages and not so much posts at all. So sometimes I know I've experienced this recently where I have created a post when I meant to create a page. So just keep in mind that everything that you will be doing will predominantly be in pages. So this is just the back end of the strengths.utk.edu website. And so we have all of these individual pages. And there are a couple of things that I would love to cover while we are in here. So let's say, Landon, do you have something?
Just real quick. When we're talking about pages and posts, I just wanted to clarify the reason that you're probably not working in posts is because WordPress was initially set up to be like a blogging website when it first started. So people were creating posts that would just be like this feed in real time in order of when people were writing blog posts. For our use at UT, posts are really only used for news stories because that sequential order is necessary. But a lot of our departments are moving away from posting true news stories on their pages. Really, with the introduction of student life communications, our divisional website is hosting news stories primarily, whereas our departments are starting to not do that as much. So I just wanted you to have that background of why most of your content, if it's going to be used over and over again, if people need to reference back to it frequently, or if your content doesn't change all that much month to month or year to year, it should live on a web page rather than a post.
Perfect. Also, Landon will be adding a lot of razzle dazzle to this presentation because she's obviously been here a lot longer than I have. So she has these fun little facts that I don't know. So one thing I really want to cover is the importance of copying code before you make any edits into your notes app or text edit or a Word document. So I have found myself many of times since the beginning of my career, afraid that I have published something without having kind of like a fail safe. So whatever I do is I always copy this code and I like to keep it in a Word document and I'll label it. So for instance, I'll leave it home, but I'll say strengths.utk.edu homepage, and I'll also include the date. So this way, let's say for instance that I mess up something and I completely delete this and I hit publish and I'm like, oh man, now it's not highlighted orange, which I'll show you guys here. So then this wouldn't be a highlighted orange box anymore. So if I'm like, oh no, I don't remember that code, for instance, you can just take your code that's in your Word document or your text edit or your notes app, and you can just repaste it all within here and then hit update and you're back to where you started. So that has been something that has been super helpful over my career. And I think that's such a valuable piece of information that will really save you if you've gone too far and you don't know where to restart. Just copying it and saving it for future reference is a great thing to do. Hi, Lauren.
Hello, thank you.
Hey. Hi, Ian,
Sorry.
Lauren. I'm so sorry. I mistakenly did not send out the Zoom link in advance, as you saw. So my apologies.
Well, there's one on the portal, like in the RSVP too, though.
Okay, good.
But it's not this one.
My bad. I meant to send it directly to everyone and clearly missed that. So I'm so sorry. We
No
are
worries.
recording, so you can go back and catch the first few minutes if you missed it.
So basically, just to fill you guys in, we've kind of been going over the basics of WordPress that you may have already taken from the university-wide WordPress training, probably when you first started getting into WordPress. And so now this part is going to be really simple, just talking about where to put your headline and where to put your copy. So that's the most basic part of WordPress. So whenever you create a page, this right here will always be your headline. And then this obviously right down here is your copy. We will get into headline hierarchy in a minute, but it's very simple. You just put your copy here and your headline here, and then you end up with a wonderful page that looks like this. So going back to our presentation, we will start talking about the importance of heading hierarchy. So headline or headings are the backbone of your content structure. So one thing that I really love is that they make it really easy for your website visitors to scan your web page. So if you had something that was all the same size, it's really hard for someone to scan that and get the information that they need. And so they're really important. And as for this illustration that you see over to the right, there should only be one heading one per presentation, or sorry, per page. And then you'll kind of go into your heading 2s, your heading 3s, and heading 4s, depending on the layout of your page. But one thing to keep in mind is that you'll probably stop at a heading 2, and then the rest of it will be paragraph copy. So again, all depends on your page layout and information. So we'll kind of dig into that a little bit more. But let's give you one example. So we'll go on to the next page. So this is an example of the Strengths website. So Lauren and Ian, I previously talked about at the beginning how I'm going to be using the Strengths website, as well as, I didn't mention this earlier, but the Big Orange Ticks website as a reference, because they're sites that I find myself in more frequently than not. So here are some examples. So Strengths for Students is the headline of the page. So that obviously is your heading 1. And then we have lead sentences that kind of give you like the gist of or kind of like a short introduction of the web page. And then you have your paragraph copy. And you'll see here we have heading 2. So if this were a heading, like if this were just your regular paragraph, it would really blend in. And we want this to stand out. So more than 18,000 UT students have taken the Strengths assessment. That's a great number. So we want to make sure that that's clear and easy to read. And then from there, just to follow the same hierarchy, we have H3s for these different cohorts and the strengths of each. So then also over here, you do have another paragraph, but since it's a quote and it's off to the right-hand side, it is size 14 rather than the size 12 that you will typically see within the paragraphs.
Real quick, I just wanted to mention, I dropped this in the chat, but if you're looking at heading 1, Kellen mentioned that that's the title of the page. Just know that you don't have to do anything to set the title of your page as a heading 1. That's an automatic formatting that WordPress gives you. So that heading 1 should be your only heading 1. As you enter your own content into that body of the page, that's when you would start with a heading 2. And you can think of it almost like an outline. If you recall writing outlines for like a paper or something where you have Roman numerals or numbers and letters, your headings are the same sort of structure. They also function for folks who are maybe using screen readers or other assistive technology. It helps them to jump from section to section on your page and understand what groups of content go together. So when you're thinking through it, don't just think through what number that heading needs to be thinking about how you are sectioning out the content into groups that should be seen together, should be read together.
Perfect. You said that better than I could have. So thank you, Lyndon. Moving on to our next page is the importance of alt text. So every web page obviously looks better and more visually appealing if you have photos. So just covering alt text, also known as alternative text, is descriptive text which conveys the meaning of a visual item in a digital setting. So throughout, obviously, every web page, there are photos. And so we like to include alt text to make it easier for those who may have difficulty navigating the page. And so also I mentioned over here that we will have more information on alt text in an accessibility session that's coming up that we'll cover at the end of our presentation. So when it comes to alt text, I really like to be as descriptive as I possibly can to really paint a picture for the person who isn't able to see it, or maybe it's not as clear. So obviously inside Neyland Stadium, let's see here. My thing is, oh, oops, sorry guys. Okay, inside Neyland Stadium, let's see, I need to move this over here with a checkered orange and white crowd and the ball sign in the background. A UT fan's wrist is in the right or on the left side of the photo, shaking an orange and white shaker. The fan has a ring on the ring finger of their right hand. So that really paints a picture if you're unable to see the photo. So we do like to include that with every image that is within the page, which later on we'll talk about how to add in photos into your WordPress page. I will say if you did take the overall or like the university WordPress training, it said that they were going to discuss that later. And there was never a second WordPress. So you may be wondering, hey, how do I add this in? So we will be happy to cover that towards the end of the presentation. And so there are also decorative items that I'm sure you may have seen throughout sites. They are orange lines that appear kind of like this up here that you'll see that kind of break up sections of text. It also just creates a lot of visual interest. And I will say that it's really dependent on the layout and the look of the page, how you use the orange hash. In WordPress, they also have just a gray horizontal line. And in some cases, again, based off of the layout and the look of your page, it's better to use a horizontal line than an orange mark or an orange hash. So we're going to talk more about that. So the orange hash, obviously, it makes a big difference in really creating or adding some color to your page. Maybe it draws your eye down the page throughout what you're reading. And to the right, we have these two pieces of code. One is the orange hash, and the other is an orange mark. So the orange mark only goes over the heading or underneath the heading, whereas the orange hash goes across the entire page. So obviously, we're now going to get into some examples of that. So here is an example of the orange hash and orange mark that you would see on your web page. So this, for instance, is in the Big Orange Ticks website. So obviously, we don't want to include both orange hashes because that would honestly be just kind of, it would make your web page look busier. So we've incorporated an orange mark here. But I'll show you all what that looks like on the back end, just so you all can get a better idea of how that looks. So moving on to our WordPress site. So you will see this right here. Obviously, I just changed the title to a session test for decorative items. This would previously say how to request home football tickets. But just for this case, I went ahead and changed it. So you'll see that we do have the orange line here and another orange line here. So to add these elements in, there are two ways that you can do it. One is through this visual tab here, and the other is through the text. So when it comes to adding your orange hash, I personally prefer to do it on the visual tab, only because it doesn't involve in-depth code. All you have to do is type in orange hash here, or wherever you think it looks best. And obviously you can preview these and you can play around with it and see maybe orange hash does look better, or maybe it's a horizontal line. But let's see. So down here, we're going to go ahead and hit preview so we can see where we're at. So if you had, which I'll show you guys as well. Sorry, this is getting really small. Perfect. Okay. So as you will see here, under step 2, purchase your ticket. If you looked on the actual page, you see that there is an orange mark here, but you don't see it on this page on the visual tab. So you would need to go over to the text section. And if you highlight it before you go over, so step 2, purchase your ticket, and it takes you over here, you can see that this is the text that we need, this orange mark. And so that is what we would include. I'm trying to find a better way to explain how this would work. So Landon, feel free to jump in at any point.
Yeah, I just added in the chat a little additional explanation for that. Even though both elements look very similar, that orange hash goes all the way across and the orange mark is just a shortened version, the way that it's coded is a little bit different. The orange hash is a short code, and that's what those brackets indicate. It's a really quick and easy way, as Kellen showed you, to just add that code in on the visual side of your page. The orange mark is a little bit more complex. As you saw, it does require like a full HTML code where it says span, class equals orange mark, style equals font weight 400. that is the full code that is creating that little mark. So if you want that to show up, you do have to copy that full line and apply it wherever you want the mark to be.
Awesome. And then there's another thing, like I would be happy to send out just like a Word or a Word document of some codes that you can use. Sometimes I pull them from different web pages, but you may not have access to those backends. So I'd be more than happy to provide all of this information. So you can just copy and paste it over and you can reference it when you need to. That's definitely something that we can do.
There are also some short codes. I've dropped in the chat the link to a URL. It's called thehill.utk.edu. That is one spot where you can find a little bit more information about coding your website. There's all different types of short codes that we'll go through more in this session and in our next session in the spring. But if you want to go to that site and start kind of looking around at what some of those easy short codes are, we can always chat with you individually too, if there are different elements that you're trying to incorporate.
Could we be adding more of this orange? I feel like I don't have hardly any orange hash or orange mark.
So yeah, it's to give you some guidance on how to use it. If you look at the Division of Student Life's, the Division website, or maybe some of our newer sites like Multicultural Student Life, Clifton Strengths, Caring Resilience, those pages were all done recently where we've started incorporating that orange hash at the top. We do kind of like a really brief introduction statement at the top of the page, followed by an orange hash with the more detailed information below it. The orange hash and the orange mark are, just like Kellen said, a great way to incorporate more color, but we also recommend that you be careful with how frequently you use it because it can become overpowering. It can break your page up into so many pieces that it actually becomes more confusing to navigate than anything. So use it sparingly, use it with caution. The orange mark in particular works best on pages that are just a long list of text and you need to draw more attention to those headings. That's really what the orange mark is intended to do.
Mm-hmm. And it, honestly, for this page, for instance, it took me playing around with adding in that orange mark because I do have a tendency to go a little orange hash heavy. I love it. Any incorporation of orange, I'm like, let's do it. But I did realize it can be very overbearing for certain pages. And so that's when I started transitioning to adding in some more orange marks. It is visually appealing, it draws your eye downward, but also it makes sure that it's not like, oh my gosh, that's orange. So it's a nice way to balance out your page. So the next is the infamous highlight boxes. So a highlight box brings attention to a certain part of the web page. They can also appear in a variety of different places on your page. They can appear at the top of the page, right-hand side, left-hand side, bottom, what have you. So I don't know if you all knew this, but there are different highlight color boxes that we use for different reasons. So we will go ahead and dive right into that. So for red, this color is also known as torch. So we reserve it for information regarding 974 help and crisis resources. So this is an example of how we would use it on a page. And then there is the there is the HTML code for this right here. So let's say your title was 974 help. Instead of your text here, that's where you would input 974 help. So hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory, but we do reserve that just for crisis resources and 974 help. And so moving on to the next one is blue, which is also known as summit. So a great option if you want to draw someone's attention to the box. So for instance, obviously on Big Orange Ticks, they need to know that the September 30th game versus South Carolina is sold out. And so we include this at the top of the page. And we actually make this a heading too, if you were to look on the Big Orange Ticks page. But we will be exploring with this page in a little bit, especially when it comes to adding in videos. So we'll be able to see kind of how that looks on the back end as well. And so here is the text that oh my gosh, the HTML code that you would use. And so same here, you would put your text here. So up here where it says September 30th game versus South Carolina game is sold out, you would have your text here. And gray is our standard color for highlight boxes. This looks really great on any website. It stands out just enough to really create visual interest, but not too much that it's like the red or the summit color. So it's just a great way to add a little bit of visual interest. And so we have it here and here. These can be found on basically any website, specifically the strengths page as well as the Big Orange Ticks page. So same thing here, your text would go in between these two bracketed items, and there you have it. But moving on to the next one, if you're not a huge fan of gray or you're wanting to add a little bit of variety, you can include orange. So this is an example of how orange would look on the web page. So some people just like the look of an orange outline. They like that it adds variety compared to gray boxes, and it just adds a little bit more razzle dazzle. And I will go ahead and say I'm going to try my hardest not to continue to say razzle dazzle, but I can't make any promises. So we're just going to see how it goes.
I wanted to add real quick, many of these highlight boxes, as you can see, the orange, the red, the summit blue, they all add color to your page. And we had mentioned being careful with that, using it sparingly so that it doesn't become overpowering or adds confusion where we're really trying to focus attention in certain areas. When we're looking at the gray box that we just talked about, Kellen, could you go back one slide? Color gray 1. It's such a subtle gray that it's easier to use it more frequently without it distracting, just like Helen said. So you might see this showing up multiple times on a page, and that's okay if we're lumping like information together. So if you find that you need to separate things out into chunks frequently on your page, start with a gray 1 highlight box and see how that works before diving into color. Reserve color for just like once on each page if you need to.
Mm-hmm. Before we go into videos, does anyone have any questions regarding highlight boxes?
Did you say you can only use red? We can't use the red, or we're not supposed to use the red?
Yeah.
So, yes.
Try to reserve red for things that are truly emergency information. We don't use red for things that are not like emergency or health related crisis type information, because red communicates emergency.
Okay. It was that way when I got here. I'll change it.
If it's something where it's like a timely announcement, but it's not an emergency, things like that summit blue or the orange highlight box would be a great way to highlight it and just bump it to the top of your page so that people are seeing it at the very top.
So it would just, maybe that could be, okay. Yeah, I like the look of an outlined box, but we'll figure something out.
There are also other colors that we did not discuss. So on that Hill page, you can see all the colors are demonstrated there. Feel free to experiment. There's not a right or wrong. I think red is just the one that we would prefer to only be used for emergency or crisis type communication.
Mm-hmm. And also, I will say these orange boxes, I tend to stay away from them only because I do like to use the orange hash. So again, just use your best judgment on how the overall layout and the layout and the look of your page is. So if you have some orange hashes and some orange marks, maybe stay away from this and go with just a highlighted gray box. Just a suggestion, but just play around with it, see what you think looks good, and just use your best judgment. So moving on to videos. So you may be a little intimidated if you've ever had to include a YouTube video or a Vimeo link into your page, but they're actually a lot easier than you would think to incorporate. The main thing is that you need to upload it to YouTube or your Vimeo account before opening WordPress and preparing to add it. And this is mostly because some videos, if it's a long video, it will take a while to upload. And so you don't want to have that page open and then prepare it and then just things happen. So I always like to make sure that it is uploaded and ready to go before it's added onto the website. So once you have your link, you'll just put in a very simple code, which I'll show you all how to do that. It is just the brackets that you'll see here, plus the word embed. And then you close it with your your line here. And let's see. So let's go on to our WordPress session test. So if you see this page, it leaves a little bit to be desired. So let's say you have a video and you're like, you know what, I really want to incorporate it into the page. But how do I do that? It's super simple. So what you'll do is you will go to edit page. And it's always easier for me. I know Landon likes to work in the text tab, but in my mind, I am such a visual person, so I really like to go to the visual section. So you have this paragraph here, these two paragraphs, and you want to include your video. So I'm going to try to explain this as slow as I possibly can. Whenever you want a video, let's say you want to have a paragraph of copy here, but you want to have a video here. There is a little tiny piece of code that you'll need to incorporate. And we'll obviously expand on this in the next slide. And we'll also talk about it more, specifically columns in our WordPress 102 training that is taking place in the spring. So if you want to just half it, let's say you want to have half of the page for the paragraph, half of the page for a video. All you have to do is include this little sign that's half and then close it off. And then from here, you have another one. And then this is where you include your code. So I went ahead and just had this from a YouTube video, which is super simple. So you just go to share or copy link or embed link, and you'll type this in here. You'll put in your code, and then you will close the embed. And then it's always important at the end of this to put half. So that way you know that that part is, this is one half of the page right here, and this is the other half of the page. So the best thing about this is that you don't have to update. You can always preview your changes to see if you like how it looks. So now this page looks great. It has more visual interest. We were able to include a video here. You have the text to the left side of it, and it's just more engaging. So it's honestly super simple to add some video into your page.
I do want to mention that if you are breaking things into columns in this way, for example, here you're using a half code, you could also do a 3-column using 1/3 codes. But anytime you're using columns, after you have finished those columns, you do need to add a short code that says clear. And that tells the web page that from that point on, we're just back to regular running text in 1 column. We're no longer doing the half columns beyond that point. And again, all of these things are, all of the short codes can be found on thehill.utk.edu. And there's even examples on there of how to incorporate the code into your page.
Does anyone have any questions about embedding videos? So now we'll talk about how to add in photos with code. So again, another lovely example from the Big Orange Ticks website, which I will show you all. But we talked about how to do halves just now about videos, and you can actually do the same exact thing for images, which is great. So I will go ahead and show you all how we typically include that. So let's say, for instance, and we're just going to go to our pages here, bear with me. And then we're going to go to our WordPress session test. So you'll see here that we have images here. So this is the one that is on the left. So we will preview this as well, so you can see it. So this is the photo that's on the left and on the right. So you'll see there in very subtle highlight boxes. And actually including these side by side is super simple. So again, like I mentioned with the video, you have your half, and then you have your lovely highlight gray color. And from here, you can just insert the image. And that is super simple. That's just done by inserting and then inserting media, and then you include your photo from there. And then at the end of that, let's see here, then you have the end of your highlight in half, because we also, in addition to this photo, have some copy, which you can see here. So this really helps set aside or break apart the football section from the basketball section that's right next to it. Landon, do you have anything to add to adding photos?
If you're able to, make sure that your photos are sized correctly. And what I mean by that is, don't try to take a photo that's really small and make it be larger than its actual size, pixel size. It'll stretch it out. It'll be all distorted. It doesn't look great. Along the same lines, if you have a huge photo that you import into your web page, it doesn't need to be huge. Our screens can only display so many pixels. So you're just taking up space on your web server basically by putting a huge photo on there. So whenever people are able to edit their photos down to the exact size that they need, we encourage that. At the same time, I recognize that most of our staff don't have access to Photoshop, or maybe don't have the skill set to know what pixel size they need or how to crop it and such. So just keep that in mind. If something's not displaying the way you expect, it may have to do with your image size, and we're happy to consult on an as needed basis. There are some tools within WordPress as you're adding photos where you can specify what size you would like it to be. They have some presets, whether it's a thumbnail, square, a medium size, I think is appropriate for these half columns. I don't recall exactly, but experiment with it a little. I think you've said everything we need to cover here, Kellen.
Okay.
Did anyone have any questions about photos? Okay.
And obviously, if you all
I have one in the chat about source of photos.
Sourcing photos, yes. We have an amazing campus catalog of photos. Let me pull the URL here. If you have not heard of the Asset Bank is where our campus photographer includes all of his photos, which are all fantastic. There are thousands and thousands of photos to come through. They're grouped in some categories. We do have a student life category, but it certainly doesn't encompass all of student life. It takes some browsing to get through because there's just so many photos in there. But Asset Bank is a great place to look. If you don't have your own photos for your department, or maybe the photos you have aren't the best representation, the campus photography is a great solution. Staff should have access to Asset Bank. We do not grant access to students to log into Asset Bank, so please don't delegate that task to your students, because they won't be able to log in with their net ID and password. It is something that the campus photographer, Stephen Bridges, I think has to give access to. So if you try to use that URL and you're not able to log in, just send me a quick email and we can request that access for you. But that is where I would recommend we go for photography that is specific to UT. We try our very best to not use stock photography. It's really easy to spot stock photography and realize that it's not actually at UT. It's not an authentic representation of our university. So whenever possible, we try to use campus photography.
Landon, what if we have just a really adorable photo of our dog? Would you consider that to be appropriate? Probably not. I'm gonna.
Me personally, or me as a UT staff member?
Yeah, I'm guessing probably not. I just thought I would ask just for.
I think you know the answer to that. Yeah.
Okay.
But I would.
Are they wearing branded gear?
Well, yeah, we could have.
Are they in orange?
Yeah.
When you squint, do you see orange? I mean, I don't know. There's
Yeah.
If
All
you
right, I'm sorry.
happen to be on campus and maybe participating in an event at the student union or out in the plaza,
Hey, yeah.
maybe it is.
We could arrange that. We could arrange that.
I love it.
However, if you wanted to send me any photos of your dog, just fun, count me in. I love that. So let's see here. We already discussed what it looks like when you add photos into your page, with a little bit of text below here. And so let's go over what we've covered so far. So we reviewed the basics that you've probably already learned in University WordPress training. That's mandatory to get access to the backend of WordPress. We discussed the importance of heading hierarchy, how to add the photos into your WordPress, how to write alternative text for your photos, how and when to add decorative items, which is the orange mark and the orange hash, when to use code for highlight boxes and the highlight box color options. However, like Landon stated, there are more beyond the ones that we've just covered, and how to add in videos. Also, I'm very excited for game day, hence this lovely photo of Smokey. So we're almost there. And then now I wanted to go ahead and just share with you some upcoming SLC professional development sessions that we have. So Ways to Tell Your Story is happening in a couple of weeks, and that is being led by our colleague Beth Hall Davis. If you haven't met her, she is phenomenal. This is definitely going to be one that's fun to attend. And then the next one is how to communicate with every ball. So the importance of accessibility. That will be also co-led by Landon and Cecilia and Beth. So that will be a great one if you're wanting to learn more about alt text and how to make your website more accessible for everyone. And then in preparation for December graduates, Beth is going to be the star of the next 3 professional development sessions. So she's going to talk about how you can celebrate your grads. So that will be on Wednesday, December 6th. Now, I will say, just stay tuned, because we will have additional sessions in the spring that you may find interesting. I know we're going to have a second branding professional development session, as well as a WordPress 102, where we're really going to dive in to more specifics with WordPress. So those are 2 that you could definitely put on your schedule. We will also be revisiting celebrating your grads. I think it's possibly April of 2024. So just some things to keep in your schedule. We have a good portion of them already up and on the website. And by website, I mean the Student Life Portal. So thank you. If you all have any additional questions, I will stop sharing my screen so we can just have a regular conversation. Also, I apologize. It is so dark in here. I should have opened a window.
Thank you, Colin. Are there any challenges you all have experienced recently that you'd like to use this time to chat through?
I've got just a couple of small things that I sometimes struggle with, and I really appreciate just some really basic stuff. The fact that you can highlight in the visual tab and then that stays highlighted in the text tab is phenomenal. I've had to learn as I go in this position, and that is so helpful to not have to be like, here's all this code. How do I figure out what I was just looking at? That is so helpful. Incredibly simple and helpful. Just get some weird sizing thing as a button, and I'm also now considering using the subtle gray on our landing page. We just have highlight in there, so what it does is just like a light solid line outline, and I cannot for the life of me get those to be the same size. So there's essentially 4 buttons, and Emily may have reached out about this at some point. Just really kind of simple. We notice it because we see it so often.
Oh, I see what you're saying on the homepage. Yes.
Yep.
This is a common occurrence when using highlight boxes. I will be honest. I love how highlight boxes turn out when they turn out the way I want it to be.
Show us.
The more columns you have, the more tricky it is to get that alignment just right. And honestly, the alignment changes if you, sorry, I'm trying to type and speak at the same time, which is really hard. If you change the size of your window, those columns change. So then the length of the highlight boxes change. So they are never perfect.
Okay.
Something I've had to learn to live.
Oh, we have that same issue
Let me see if I can.
with our photo page. Like where we have our staff pictures, and if somebody doesn't have a picture, and then we're doing a filler, and then it's like, and it just can't.
I am
Can't get it to
gonna
work.
try to log in
You want to
here.
look at mine and judge me?
I'm gonna try to log into Sean's page here and see what's going on. If it's something I can quickly address.
So sometimes it's like, would we be better if we just started again? You know, like with that, I don't know, right? Because it's so frustrating. We're like, what if I do 2 spaces here and then you know?
Okay, so
Yeah.
I can see what's happening here is that
Text.
there's 2 lines of text. So that highlight box is going to go around the entire thing. However long your content is within it, that highlight box will outline it.
Got
So
it.
here your content it's just longer than the one next to it. You're not going to be able to solve that problem. Now over here, something else is happening because you do have 1 line on each side. And I would venture to guess it's because this is on the same line and it is formatted as a heading. So I'm going to remove that formatting. Maybe I'm going to. Let me try retyping it.
Also, if you guys are having this problem and you don't even know where to start, you can definitely reach out to myself and Landon and we can help. It definitely can be a little frustrating at times.
Absolutely. So you can see that fixed it. Sean, I have had this problem more times than I can count, and I'm never quite sure exactly how I fixed it. Sometimes I fix it, sometimes I don't. But a lot of times if something is just a little wonky, deleting it and then typing it back out for whatever reason, there's something happening that just needs to go away and we need to restart. So that's usually the first thing I try to do is to just delete that section and type it by hand. I'll say highlight boxes, and if you ever experiment with accordion collapsibles, if you were to copy and paste everywhere that you want that to show up, sometimes it just doesn't work. It's a
Okay.
little finicky.
Also, one thing that I've noticed is if I have boxes that are uneven sizes, I try to find ways that I can shorten the copy. So instead of, I think it said report a code of conduct violation, since you know that you're on the code of conduct page, possibly just shortening that to report a violation, that could help make those boxes be on the same level. Sorry, on the same height and size. So that's just a suggestion. I typically try to do that if at all possible.
Makes sense. And that would probably take, and yeah, matches what Landon just said. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then if you just heard the word collapsibles and you're a little confused about that, we will be talking about that in WordPress 102. It's one of the most fun, as well as the most, well, okay, Landon and I have different ideas of fun, but I'm going to be positive and say it's one of the most fun things that you can do in WordPress. So we'll be excited to talk about that. But if you're like eager and dying to know, we can talk about it before then as well.
Is there anything else we can look at together and try to help you work through? If not, that's fine. We just wanted to hold that space so that you can raise any questions. If you feel more comfortable reaching out to us individually, that is totally okay. If you don't have any questions now, but you get started working on your website and all of a sudden it doesn't make sense anymore, just reach out to Kellen or I. We are happy to hop on a Zoom call and do troubleshooting, brainstorming, talk through these things again with you individually if you'd like.